Hello, and welcome to Bourne to Dance, the podcast from Matthew Bourne's New Adventures that explores and questions why dance moves, inspires, and excites us. My name is Paul Smethurst, resident artist for New Adventures and your host. Each week, I will be joined by members of our extended family to talk about their journey through dance and how it has impacted their lives. Even glancing at today's guest's astonishing resume, it's clear that dance and championing dance is the lifeblood that fuels her. I would hazard a guess that her incredible career spanning almost every facet of the dance industry, from strategy and development to advocacy and mentoring, is truly a vocation. She began her life in dance as a performer, teacher, and one of the pioneers of the community dance movement before moving into more organisational roles, ultimately becoming Director of Dance UK and Director of Dance for Arts Council England. In 2013, she was awarded the Jane Attenborough Dance Industry Award and CBE for services to dance. Her formidable wisdom and expertise are enveloped in her gentle, warm, nurturing nature. And here at New Adventures, she is a beloved member of our family and blessedly still a member of our board after stepping down as chair earlier this year after holding the position since 2015. Having officially quote-unquote retired from her career in dance, she is still as active and involved as ever, dancing with the Encore East company at DanceEast and joining the occasional New Adventures workshop. And I can attest that she is as beautiful and graceful a dancer as she is a human being. Jeanette Siddall, welcome to Bourne to Dance.
Oh, Paul, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, it's a good job. It's a podcast. You can't see me blushing. I'm redder than your jumper. But that was so generous and so lovely. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. I mean, I think it's really hard to sum up your amazing career, but I just wanted to touch on just how generous and nurturing you are as a person, and the way that, you know, personally I feel very grateful to you, but I know that as a company we wouldn't be where we are without you. You've really helped and guided us. It's just such a pleasure to have you with us on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. And it's been such a pleasure, and still is such a pleasure, to be part of that New Adventures family.
How are you today, Jeanette, apart from blushing?
Calm down a little bit, thank you. I'm absolutely fine. It's a lovely sunny day. What's not to like, really?
I know.
It's great.
And we get to have a conversation about dance, which, as I said in the introduction, is pretty much your whole world.
It always has been, and it's true, as you say, you know, I kind of retired about 5 years ago, and I've been busier than ever. But now, instead of talking about dance and thinking about it and funding it and all those other backroom things, I'm now dancing a lot, which it's amazing.
It's your time. It's your time to be the participant, isn't it?
It's my time to dance.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, when was the last time you danced? And I reckon it was probably quite recently.
Yesterday.
Yes, amazing. Okay, tell us, what were you doing yesterday?
Yesterday, well, in the morning I did a class with Russell Malifant.
Just casually,
Just as you do.
do.
It was on Zoom, and I was in my sitting room and went off to DanceEast and did a ballet class.
Wow. So you're pretty much having a similar schedule to a professional dancer at the moment.
Pretty much, yeah. And a lot of it is to do with Encore East. And with the pandemic, DanceEast had to close its studios. I kind of moved to Ipswich when I retired because DanceEast was there, and I wanted to do more dancing. I hadn't envisaged I wanted to do quite as much as I'm doing, but you know, that's fine. I'm not complaining. Up until that point, DanceEast had managed Encore East, which is a company of over 50-year-olds. There's 16 of us. And we just decided we wanted to carry on and do stuff. And we managed to do stuff, and we've probably done more than we would have done had the pandemic not happened. So it's extraordinary, really. I think we're a bit of a success story of what becomes possible. We learned how to do Zoom. We learned how to contact teachers and pay them by having a bit of a whip round. You know, we're totally unstructured to start with, but it was also nobody quite knew how long that was going to go on for. So there was no point in putting a lot of structures in place and then having to undo it all. So we just wanted to dance together. So that's what we did, even though it was on Zoom.
It's such a brilliant story, isn't it, of a community coming together and recognizing that joint passion for something and going, do you know what? We're going to do something about this. We're going to make this happen. In the lockdown, one might think that dance would have disappeared and sort of, died a death, because it really, we would think, depends on you being in person, being in the studio, and you're talking about the opposite of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, New Adventures played a part, because most of us took part in the Play Within film.
Play Within film.
Which was just brilliant, partly because it gave us an opportunity to laugh and to giggle, and didn't we need that? But partly because we were actually doing something. There was a purpose to it. So we were learning steps. We were making steps up. We were having to remember things. And actually on Zoom, when you're dancing, you can relate to everybody else that you're dancing with. It's a bit weird, but you can do it. So something like the Play Within film, where you've got lots of people coming together from all over the country who'd never get together in the same space if it was physical space, and would probably never be able to commit that amount of time and effort and doing the homework in between the sessions and all of those other things you made us do. It was just brilliant. It was absolutely what we needed. Yeah.
And I think there are some real silver linings out of this obviously very tragic time, but it's opened up some opportunities. Yeah. And I think made it a lot more accessible, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. And there are so many opportunities internationally as well. So we, at one point, we got somebody teaching us who was in Portugal, other people who were joining us from other parts of the world to do open classes that we were organising. It has been absolutely fantastic. The other thing is, we're always billed as a performing company, and you couldn't perform. I mean, this applied to a lot of professionals as well, but as a kind of non-professional community performing company, you just don't know what to do. What do? You couldn't commission anybody to choreograph anything because you didn't know when you'd ever be able to do it. So we ended up dancing outside a lot in all sorts of places. Fridton Beach was lovely.
Oh, not too cold. Was that in the summer?
No, it was a beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous day, and everybody on the beach was just loved what we were doing. We were kind of doing structured improvisation, so it was quite easy to do. And we ended up in the sea, which you have to on the beach. And that was a project that one of the members of the company, Stella, had sort of set up and formulated. And so we did a couple of things with her, another one in Harwich in the Redoubt, which is the old fort, Napoleonic fort there, which was just the most amazing place to dance. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm jealous. Yeah. Like your life, it just sounds so gorgeous. And obviously you've worked very hard to get to this place, but I'm intrigued. Do you feel like you put your own dancing on the back burner to have the career that you had?
That's a really interesting question, actually. I do remember making that transition quite consciously, and I got fired up by the possibilities of doing some fundraising and getting other people to do things and policy and all of those things which sound slightly boring. And I was doing classes in various schools and doing classes after school and all those sorts of things. And there was only so much I could do on my own. I realised if I got another 4 people together and I taught them how to teach, we could have 4 times the impact. And that was a sort of light bulb moment. And I went, that's what I should do. And that was fantastic. So I carried on doing bits of teaching, probably for about another 6 months to a year. But by that point, it was very much a question of, that was a distraction. And the stuff I really needed to get on with was actually advocating for dance, making people take more notice of it, looking at the sort of facilities and the resources that were available, and just sort of elbowing a bit more space for dance.
Gosh, do we need that? And we need that now more than ever. We're going to come back to that point, but I'm just going to rewind. We're going to go back in time in our little time machine, because I'm intrigued, Jeanette, for you to tell us some of your earliest memories of dance. When did dance enter your life, and when did you first dance, and when did you fall in love with it? Paint us the picture.
Okay. When I was about 7 or 8, we did a little bit of ballet and tap, but that didn't really have a big impact on me. And when I got to 11, I went to a school. We lived in the middle of the country, so the school was about an hour's bus ride away. There was no way you could do after-school activities, and so that sort of stopped. And at school, we didn't do any dance. It was a girls' grammar school, so tennis maybe. netball, definitely. But that was about it, really. And for one term, we did have a teacher who came in and taught some modern educational dance. I think we were trees a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah. So that classic cliche is true.
I think
it's classic for a reason.
Absolutely. And I loved it.
Well, there we go.
I loved being a tree. And then I went to teacher training college and Newcastle, and went to see the Royal Ballet doing Swan Lake at the Newcastle Theatre Royal. In those days, the Royal Ballet toured the country, and there was very little dance available. And I went to see Antoinette Sibley and Anthony Dowell doing Swan Lake. And there's a bit at the end of that lovely romantic gushy duet when the wicked horrible Baron turns up at the side of the stage, and Antoinette Sibley just twitched her shoulders, the tiniest movement you could imagine, and she went from being this gorgeous, fluid, beautiful woman into almost an automaton swan. Like all her humanity fled. As I say, I've never been the same since, really. It just changed my life. And I did go back to see a second performance of Romeo and Juliet the following day, and I think it was somebody called Margot Fontaine and Rodolphe Nureyev. Bit disappointing, I have to say.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So you saw them in a matinee in Newcastle?
Yeah. And it was phenomenal. And then I went to see something about a few months later, the next ballet company that came to Newcastle. And they had those poet shoes that made that noise on the stage. They would clunk, 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 clunk. And somebody fell over. And I sat there thinking, you know what? I could do that myself. So that's when I decided to start dancing and to find somewhere to go dancing and to do ballet.
So the memory, you were there watching that Swan Lake. What was it that really captured you? Was it the ballet? I'm intrigued about what that moment was that made you go, oh, not just that I enjoy watching this, but I want to try this.
Well, I think the Antoinette Sibley Anthony Dowell performance was so inspiring. I didn't even contemplate being able to do it myself. It was far too amazing. It was seeing that inspiration on the one level and something that was much more accessible, somebody falling over on the other, that made me think, well, all I can do is have a go and find somewhere to go to. So I think the thing that did it was that combination of, it was really about the dancing. And I still think I'm probably a dancer's audience member. Yeah. I can forgive all sorts of choreography if the dancing is amazing. That's what really drives me. I love watching dancers.
And so you went to take class in ballet.
Yeah.
Was that with an intention to enjoy doing it?
Yeah.
Or was it, I'm going to have a career? Because, I mean, you've had this incredible career. No, not necessarily like performing on the stage, but that was your wasn't it? That was your window into this amazing world that we're in. So what was talk us through your thought processes of, you were training to be a teacher. What kind of a teacher were you?
Primary school.
Right, okay.
Yeah, never any good at remembering the kids' names, though.
Right, okay.
I didn't last very long. And I couldn't do dinner money either. But my thought process was I just wanted to try. And I do remember leaving after that first class to go home, and I ended up doing jetés up the street. I was so excited. It was just, it had ignited something in me. I also remember that very early on, the teacher, you're standing at the bar, well, a chair, and you're standing there and you're doing all that kind of pulling up, and she just told us to do this port de bras and talked about carving the air as you did the port de bras to the second. And I just felt for the first time in my life I had a right to be there. I had a right to be in the world. It was like I was carving my space in the world. So it did a lot for me in terms of confidence, joy, all those things, which I think probably contributed to my career more so than the fact that I'd done some dancing and done some teaching. But it was the fact that it changed me as a person. And gave me that sort of confidence as a person.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Jeanette. Thank you for sharing that. So then what happened? How did you go from the splintery chairs to getting a CBE for your services to dance? I mean,
that's a very long story.
It's a very long story.
I am very
old. A whistle-stop tour?
You might need to speed me up a little bit. Okay. But this is sort of the country route of whistle-stop tours.
Okay.
So I left Newcastle, went back to York, and I rang every school in the book, dance school, to say, could I come and do classes? And they wouldn't have me because I was too old. So we're now going back into the maybe late 70s, early 80s. There was no such thing as community dance. There was very little contemporary dance. When I was in York, I saw London Contemporary Dance Theatre doing one of their first residencies. Nobody did that kind of thing. It was a very different world. And eventually I did find this amazing woman who let me go to her class. She decided that I was so desperate she couldn't stop me. But, it would let me do everything. So we did ballet, tap, modern gymnastics, revised Greek. If you've ever tried revised Greek, it's gorgeous. And then eventually she let me teach contemporary to her ballet girls, which was amazing in those days. It was very remarkable. But I think that kind of fed that urge I later developed to do something about the infrastructure for dance. It's all right having a few great dancers, but if they have to be either very rich or very lucky or have the right kind of parents, go to the right sort of school, then we're losing a whole load of talent that we know is out there. We know lots more people could enjoy this thing, could be amazing dancers, could be amazing choreographers, but they're denied that possibility because nobody knows about it. It was quite a driver. Anyway, eventually I managed to get to Laban for a year, which was remarkable to get retrained as a dancer. How daft is that?
It's brilliant.
They were I think it was Marion North and Bonnie Bird when I was there, and they were both really good at sort of thinking, well, there's a bit of talent, there's a spark, there's something there.
And taking that elitism out is...
And get rid of all those rules about you have to be under the age of 5 and you can't be more than 5'2" if you're a girl. Anyway, I did that. And because I'd done teaching and a bit of dancing, I ended up working with several dance and education companies of various kinds, and ended up doing one where I became the artistic director, which was called Links in Lincoln. And it was Jeanette, and Jeanetta. Yeah, bizarre. And that was it. That was the company. There were various other people came and went, but we were sort of mainstays. And
were they let go because they weren't called Jeanette?
Yeah.
That
yeah. I had to be called Jeanette.
I couldn't have applied.
No, sorry. No, absolutely not. But we basically went around schools in Lincolnshire and Humberside, and we would do little performances in the school and teach workshops, and it was really lovely and very, very good fun. But eventually, like always, the money ran out, and the sort of policy became much more of having an individual community dance artist somewhere, and then ended up, as I say, in Gillingham, which I loved. And then eventually I got to work at the Arts Council as the dance officer with responsibility for education. So those strands have kind of come and gone all the way through, really. Eventually I got promoted to be senior officer, and then I went to work on senior management, which wasn't dance. Then I sort of opted out of dance for about a year. Then I had to go back again.
So why did you opt out?
I didn't really know where I was going to go next and what I was going to do next. And it felt a little bit as though some of the issues and the problems that we seemed to be making progress with were coming back again. It was that cyclical thing, which happens, I now know, with every area of life. So that sort of process could be quite draining, really, and a bit debilitating. And you kind of go, oh, well, I can't make any difference and all of that. So I went off and did project management for the Dome, and then realised actually I really didn't care about much other than dance. So I started volunteering for Dance UK, and then when Jane Attenborough left, I became the director of Dance UK. I managed to build it up a bit, and that was fantastic, but very scary. You look back, we didn't know what we were doing at all. All sorts of things. And just being very responsive to issues that came up in the dance sector. And of course, it could be anything. It was the loss of training grants at one point, dance injuries at another point. You see, having to reinvent yourself all the time, I think was probably very good for me. Then back to the Arts Council as Director of Dance. And then after that, the Arts Council kind of did another restructure, and all the art form directors were made redundant at roughly the same time. And funnily enough, by that point, I had this amazing kind of sympathy vote from the sector. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but various people came up to me and said, well, would you do this? Would you do that? And before I knew what I was doing, really, I thought, oh, actually, I suppose I'm freelance now.
And is that where we met you then?
Yeah.
So you started off consulting, didn't you? And helping us with some fundraising. Yeah. Tell us about that part of the story then. Did you know about our work beforehand?
Yeah.
And how did you meet Matthew?
Well, I suppose, I can't quite remember the first time I met Matthew, but I knew of his work from very early days, from Spitfire and the small group of people who came out of Laban, because I was at the Arts Council at that point. It was so very exciting to see all that sort of young and different talent. And it was a point when there was a lot of different kinds of choreographers coming out, particularly from Laban. Certainly seeing Swan Lake and going, oh my God, why has nobody thought swans should be male before? Because I'd only ever known swan neck as classical ballet, and to see it done with contemporary dance and contemporary dancers, and very much it had this sort of impact and immediacy, which, however beautiful the balletic version can be, it can't quite do that, other than Antoinette Sibley and her shoulders. But Matthew's version was just absolutely stunning. So I knew that, and Nutcracker again was one of those things where you kind of go, why didn't anybody think that it had to be set in a children's home? And all of those things were just kind of go, it's just remarkable. It's so appropriate, it's so fitting, it's so right. And it took the genius of Matthew Bourne to come up with that idea and make it fit. And it was just fantastic.
You talked about the cyclical nature of dance and needing to advocate for dance. Why do you think dance struggles to be seen and appreciated, to be viewed as viable as an art form, but just in itself? Why do you think that is, and what can we do to help?
Well, I think there are lots of reasons for it, and one of those reasons is it's a very contemporary art form. Pre the 1950s, 60s really, there was no contemporary dance in this country. We're talking mid-60s onwards, and it came from America, and we're very good at stories in this country. We've got Shakespeare to blame to some extent, not even non-narrative. It has to be written down, it's in words. And we're also very good at music, and that's been around since medieval times, and it's all connected to the church. So both of those things have got a very long history. If you think about performing arts, you're basically talking about moving, singing, speaking, or playing music, the performing arts. And dance is very much late to the table. So I think that's part of the issue. So we haven't quite yet got to the critical mass. And I've seen that difference in my lifetime. The number of companies that are around, the size of audiences that are around, the number of people taking part in dance is massive compared to what it was when I was that 19-year-old trying to find a dance teacher in York. So I think that's one issue. It's just visibility. I think alongside of that, there are those slightly more complicated things that we've always had a sort of hierarchy where anything physical is not as good as anything intellectual. So that sort of work with your brain is always paid better. It's seen to have a higher status. The people that work with their hands and their bodies seem to be more menial, probably not paid as well, and certainly looked down upon a bit. And then you put across that all the stuff that came out. Well, I blame Victoria and Albert, really. Well, Albert for dying, because Victoria really liked dancing, apparently, but she stopped it when he died. And then you've got all that stuff, the Victorians covering up their legs, the shame of the body. In the 50s, there was a little brilliant book called A National Ballet or something. I can't remember exactly, but it did talk about wearing tights made men gay. Wow. So there's a whole thing to do with masculinity in dance and homosexuality in dance and just ridiculous stuff. But I think we tend to have a ruling class which come from a very particular sector of society where some of that stuff that most of us would go, so old-fashioned, life's not like that anymore. But it's what they've grown up with. So, we're talking about politicians and policymakers. They may well understand that music is important and not be able to say anything against it. They may well understand football is important because it's economically very viable, but they're not going to go into something as niche as dance. Whereas actually I firmly believe that a degree of dance education fits people for all sorts of aspects of life. Just that physical literacy is something we need these days, and we've really needed it during the pandemic. You must have walked down the street the same as I have, going, if only people learnt choreography, they'd be able to get 2 meters apart. Mostly they couldn't. They're absolutely hopeless at it. So there's and just how we are in the public realm. A lot of the time, we don't know how to behave. We don't know how to relate to other people in a way that's not either combative or totally secret or myopic. We're not relaxed in that way. Whereas actually, I think a little bit of dance at school, a bit of understanding of it, a bit of exploration of it, a bit of experience of it would make people much better adults.
Oh, I totally agree. Maybe you can give us one insight. Obviously, you did this a lot in your professional career, but what can we do? What can anyone do, or maybe dance companies do to influence any policymakers, or to really champion the kind of state of dance as being this viable art form? Have you got any top tips or thoughts?
Keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And the number of times, people who had nothing much to do with dance would experience it for the first time, understand that passion from the people who are involved in it in some way, or just like it, and that changes them. Get as many people as possible to come and see a show, or get involved in a rehearsal in some way, or a workshop. Getting people to experience it is really, really important. That's the thing that changes people, I think.
You were talking about the visibility and the accessibility, and you're right, that's what the company, does so well. You have stepped down as chair the end of your tenure. You're staying with us on the board. What have been some of your highlights from your time of being on the board?
I think probably every production. It's always quite nerve-wracking the first time I see something, because I've had nothing to do with it whatsoever in terms of the artistic side. But I think probably the highlights have been slightly smaller moments. I will always remember watching things in rehearsal. That's so special. It's just brilliant. And certainly with the Red Shoes, I was there the first morning when the company came together. Everybody's standing around in a circle going, I'm so-and-so, and my role is this and this. And you just kind of go, this is so big. It was such a lot, felt like such a lot of people. And all those dancers knew what their roles were. And then Matt talked us through the production with the music, and Les Brotherton doing designs, and he knew what was happening every moment for the next hour and a half, and he just did the one-man show of the Red Shoes. It was phenomenal, and it was amazing. Absolutely brilliant. And I actually went down to Plymouth to see that. I think I saw the final dress rehearsal, which never quite got finished because they were overrunning so much.
Yeah, I was there. There was an invited audience, and it got to like the kind of climax of the piece, and they were like, and you'll have to come back to see the rest of, to see what happens. It was such a cliffhanger because they hadn't finished it.
Exactly.
Live performance.
It was nerve-wracking.
What a thrill.
Yeah, it was just fantastic. So it's those moments I think I will always treasure as highlights. I did enjoy going. I did go to Australia when Lord of the Flies was in Melbourne, and that was amazing because suddenly you realise how another country appreciates something, and it was great that they took it on. It was really brave and fantastic, and they were talking about having Indigenous boys involved, and I think they found 3, and they thought that was amazing. We were all kind of there's only 3, that's not really good, is it? We should have done better. But the Arts Centre was going, no, we've never had anybody. So it's that kind of thing where you kind of go, okay, I have to just adjust my expectations and my norms a bit.
You were really key in the development of the Centre of Advanced Trainings, the CAT schemes across the country. Why was that important for you to envisage a different way of training? I guess in my eyes, it's very much, even though there is a classical ballet element, it was starting to give a platform to contemporary dance training. Yeah. Am I wrong in that? Or?
No, that's absolutely right. It's quite interesting because it came out of the music and dance scheme. What happened was it was the boarding schools. I was on the advisory board or something, and we had debates about should public money be paying for the hotel costs of these students? Do they have to go away to train in ballet and just go to a boarding school? Could they not do something nearer home? And why is there no training in dance for contemporary dance or Bharatanatyam or hip hop, or why is it just ballet? So there are lots and lots of debates around that, and it was one of those brilliant stories where for some reason that nobody ever quite understood, a little bit of money became available for some kind of pre-vocational training for the music schools, and the civil servant who was running us at the time just said, there's 100,000 for dance, what do you want to do with it? Back of an envelope, we had several plans.
I bet you did, like that. You were ready.
Just like that, exactly. Yeah. And it was the beginning of the Centres for Advanced Training, and we went, we've got a number of spaces now that people can work in, and they don't have to leave home. They can get advanced training much more locally. And maybe it's weekends, maybe it's one night a week. And so we decided it was important that there were good facilities for those dancers because they were going to be brilliant dancers. They were in the future. So buildings was one of the things we were concerned about. That, and beyond that, we wanted a bit of a national spread. And of course, much, much later on, when there's 10 across the country, I think now, and each of them has probably got between 60 and 80 young people from the ages of 11 to 18, and mostly they go on to vocational training and careers in dance. So now some of them you kind of come across, you go, oh, they were a CAT student, which is fantastic. But for me, the real highlight was I used to work for an organisation called Dance Consortium that toured international dance companies, and we toured Albin Ailey from America, and we managed to persuade them, it took a long time, but we got there in the end, to let us borrow their rehearsal director, Matthew Rushing, to work with 5 students from every one of the CATs. And they came to Ipswich and took over DanceEast. And to see 45 young people doing the opening of Revelations, which is the big spiritual number, which is the sort of iconic Albin Ailey piece. It was just, even thinking about it now brings me to tears. It was phenomenal.
I bet I've got goosebumps just imagining it, and I wasn't even there.
I know.
What a beautiful memory for you, and what a legacy, Jeanette. I mean, congratulations, because it's a remarkable achievement, and you know, I know that those CAT schemes do so much for young aspiring dancers, because for me, what really resonates in this conversation is this idea of striving toward equity. One size doesn't fit all. There's nothing against those boarding schools, but what about everybody else? And you have been asking that question, what about everybody else? What are the other routes into this industry for people that maybe, 1, can't afford it, 2, can't travel there, 3, you know, it's just not going to be accessible for them. And thank you for what you've done, because it is huge. And I just wanted to just personally just ask you the question, what was it like getting a CBE? What was that experience like?
It was extraordinary.
Does it still feel real? Do you
well, yourself? It's 2013, so I've kind of got used to it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you get the letter which says the Queen and the Prime Minister is minded to. You kind of go, no, they're not.
Yeah.
It's
is this a
really.
Joke? Like, who's faked this? Who's forged this?
Yeah, you'd know. It's your colleagues. Incredibly grateful, I think. Yes, that was the big thing. It was just like, oh, yeah. Going to Buckingham Palace is a bit strange.
Jeanette, we're going to move on slightly. We're going to talk about music.
Oh, good.
And we asked you beforehand to give us a little insight into a piece of music that you love to dance to. And I'm just going to let everyone into a secret that Jeanette found this very difficult. She's got very eclectic taste, everybody, as I would expect, and found it hard to narrow something down. So we're going to listen to a little segment, and this is The Heart Asks Pleasure First by Michael Nyman from the film The Piano. It's so beautiful and evocative and soothing. Why did you pick that piece of music as one of your choices, and what does it mean to you? And tell us.
It is dance, and every time I hear it, I want to dance. I saw you dancing as well over there.
Yeah,
Paul. Yeah. You can't sit still to it. And it's that lovely kind of lyrical, round, circular.
It's lilting, isn't it?
It's lilting.
It's got an ebb and a flow.
Yeah.
And you kind of get carried away in its wake.
Exactly. I did love the film, which was very evocative, and it made me cry. It's quite sad, but it's got lots of emotions running through it, and there is a bit of that resilience and that overcoming difficulty comes through towards the end, and yet it's not a happy ending. So, but there's something that just sustains her through that. That you kind of, I find I could respond to, I could react, feel for.
Yeah.
But
have you danced to this piece of music?
Oh yeah, loads.
Yeah.
Yeah. All in my sitting room.
Okay, and then just start moving.
Well, yes, it's that thing. Whenever it starts, the thing I always want to do is just take my arm. It's one of those elbow dances. You know those things? That
you just start those spirals and those,
yeah. And it just does that every time. But I think probably almost anything by Michael Nyman is, I think he's a dancer, really. He just dances through music, but it's all dancing.
Absolutely.
And I don't really see the point of music that doesn't have dance going with it.
Yeah.
It's a bit pointless as far as I can see.
Music was made to be danced to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Amazing. I love that. Jeanette, we're going to move on to our quick fire round. Okay, are you ready?
No, never.
Good. We're going to start with a word association. I'm going to say the name of a Matthew Bourne show, and I'd like you to say the first word that comes into your head. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Swan Lake.
Beautiful.
Carman.
Powerful. Smoky. Oh, sorry. Can I have some more words?
No,
Smoky,
just one.
Sexy.
Just one. Okay, we'll let you have 3. Edward Scissorhands.
Cute.
Cinderella.
Romantic.
Nutcracker.
Funny.
Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, most gorgeous, wonderful thing ever. My favourite forever and ever and ever.
Why do you love that one so much?
I love the young people. It's a very, very young cast. And there's something very raw and energetic about them. And it's beautiful. And the lead dancers are just stunning. And I think it's very resonant of all sorts of things. The institution, the being separated, being drugged, being done to, and finding a way out of that. It's a sort of basic human struggle, but so beautifully done. And it just looks gorgeous. What isn't that to like?
It's just such a special piece, and obviously has a very close place in my heart, having worked with all those young dancers that we found from around the country and got them to perform on stage with the professionals.
And with Ariel as
well.
With
Ariel Smith, who was the young associate choreographer who's having the most phenomenal career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next question. If you could turn any story, film or book into a Matthew Bourne production, what would you pick?
Can I cheat?
Yeah.
Okay. I asked this question of a few people knowing I was coming here today. Partly because I was quite nervous. But anyway, I spoke to Brendan Keeney at DanceEast, who's the artistic director, and he immediately came up with the perfect answer. The Life of Sir Frederick Ashton.
Ooh.
So it's not actually a book or a film.
So
at
biopic.
The moment. It would be a biopic.
Well, not a pic.
No, bio dance. Yeah, exactly. And it's just perfect. It's got everything going for it. Because he was born in South America, lived his life down there, saw Anna Pavlova dance. You can see the piece already. His mother was from Suffolk, so he died in Suffolk, buried in just outside Eye.
I didn't know there was a Suffolk connection.
Oh, very, very strong. Yeah, he thought of Suffolk as his home, apparently. Yeah. But his dad died, committed suicide. Much later in life, his partner died in a car crash. Loads of tragedy, loads of love. And he was a hugely famous international choreographer. And the amount of work he did and the range of his work would just be perfect source material.
I can see it. It's a very astute choice, Jeanette.
Well, I can't take credit for the choice. I have to give credit to Brendan for that one. Brendan. But when he said it, it's just like perfect.
Have you spoken to Matthew about this?
No.
Okay. Next board meeting. You just slip it into any other business.
Yeah.
Next question, Jeanette. What is one piece of advice you would give to the next generation wanting to get into the arts industry?
Follow your passion. Just simple, really. It won't always be easy. And if you want to be a dancer, it really won't be easy. But, if your passion is dance, as I have lived to tell the tale, there are many, many, many ways of doing it and being engaged with it and making a difference. Follow your passion.
Perfect. Well, perfect answer for our Born to Dance podcast. Thank you so much. Following on from that, if you could pass on the love of dance to somebody or a group who may not have the chance to experience it, who would it be and why?
I think, who it would probably be, politicians.
Do you know what? That's what I said.
Surprise, surprise.
We share a mind, Jeanette.
Yeah.
Tell us why.
Because they have the potential power to make it better for everyone. They could do stuff that makes dance much more accessible, that puts it onto the national curriculum, that means that kids can do it as... I think secondary schools in particular, you can't stop young kids dancing. They're going to do it. But once they get to that sort of puberty and the body gets a bit awkward and they're 11, 12, 13, they're thinking about being adults, they need to grow into dance, not grow out of it. Actually, politicians could make that difference. They could make it something that every young person in this country could experience at an age when it would make a difference to their lives.
Do you think that dance is a human right?
Yeah. It's so natural. Kids do it before they talk, before they do anything else. They're dancing and they carry on dancing until they grow out of it. We stop them. It's the only human pursuit. We kind of suggest you shouldn't do it once you get to be grown up. It's for children. And that's a ridiculous thing to be saying to people. So it's a human instinct, it's a human drive. So of course it's got to be a human right.
What an amazing way to end our conversation, Jeanette. It's been so beautiful and special for me to talk to you today. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. It's been such fun.
If you enjoyed this episode, then please go check out our other episodes, which you can find on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and YouTube. If you want to know more about New Adventures, then check out the links in our show notes. I have been your host, Paul Smethurst. This series has been produced by Hattie Moyer, and our researcher is Stephen Daly. The theme music is by Terry Davies from the production Play Without Words. For more information about the additional music in this episode, please check the show notes. This has been Bourne to Dance, brought to you by New Adventures. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Bye for now.